We want to welcome everyone from every location right now. Wherever you are so welcome. Online church, we love the fact that you're part of this. But also, I got a special shout out, and that is to Glasgow. It's Limassol in Cyprus and Kigali, Rwanda. Yeah! I tell you guys, we're so glad that you're joining us from wherever you are, or maybe you've just picked up this message online or you're watching on TV. We are so glad that you've joined us in this series called the Benefit Series. And we've decided to do the Benefit Series because we just couldn't get over the amount of benefits there are of following Christ. Somehow we bought into a lie that following Christ means you lose everything. But what you do is you lose the very things that are not going to do you good, but you gain actually life and life in all its fullness. So when we look at the benefits of following Christ, they are immeasurable. You can't even get to the bottom of them. So we're just going to do a series of a few weeks and just try and sort of tap into them. And so I've got a message this week for you that's going to be fun. Some of you are going to be real excited about this. Some people, you're going to dread it. But we just love these messages of freedom. We don't want to just have, a great message that we sort of always just enjoy. We want to be challenged, but we also want to know, hey, this is a benefit. I'm telling you, you might hear the word and think, I don't know if that's a benefit. It's a benefit. It's going to be a benefit. And I'll just introduce you to my jelly bean factory. And in fact, my sister Denise bought me these. And they're my favorite. Guys, I don't want to advertise anything right now to all the people around the world. But if you ever want to bless me, you've got to get the brand right. It's not any jelly bean. This is special. I mean, I'll tell you what, man. There's 28 flavors in here. And jelly beans, I'm going to talk about the benefits of following Christ, and it's something to do with jelly beans. Jelly beans, they are my favorite because I've got this sweet tooth that I've had, for probably the last just over 40 years. And I'm telling you, it's something that really has overcome me. And it was just 3 months ago that Heather and I were talking after returning from somewhere, and I just realized something. I realized this thing. I'd got bigger. I'd become bigger, a bigger person. But not in a positive way. It was I just noticed, hey, after 40 years or so, you begin to get a little bit bigger in places. And so I was chatting to Heather about it, and she said, you need to join me. I said, join you where? First she said to my Keep Fit combat lessons. And I said, you've got to be having a laugh. Because I'm not going there in those leotards and all that stuff. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't look good on me. I've tried it before. It doesn't look good on me. And so I said, I'll do mine at home anyway. That didn't seem to sort of do enough. So she said, it's the diet. So we decided we're going to go on a diet together, and it's this diet called Slimmer's World. Which means, see, a few whoops there, because I got some people who are owning this in the house. And I thought, what the heck? I've never been on a diet in my life, right? I didn't know really what it was. I just figured, apart from fasting, it's like you eat food, but you're careful what you eat, something like that. And so I thought, right, I'm going to do this with you. And if I'm going to do it, H, I'm going to do it with you all the way. So you better train me. So she started training me about this thing. You're allowed so many sins, apparently. I thought, doesn't seem right. But sins, apparently, are things like these things. These are the sins. And I love them. They're so attractive. They're the colour. And you're allowed so many sort of sins, and the idea is you've got to cut out things. The big sort of, I think, moment for me that I sort of had to really consider whether I was serious about this was to cut out sugar. Because I love sugar. Do you know what I mean? I like it in my tea. I like it in my coffee. I like it in my cereal. I mean, what's bran flakes without sugar? And I just love sugar. And I love it in sweets, and I love it in chocolate. And I love it in sweets, and I love it in chocolate. I've got an allergy to fruit, and I've got a bit of an allergy to vegetables. So sugar in my sweets has been my life. Coca-Cola. I mean, it's like I was made for it. So suddenly I went through and I had this massive little sort of stockpile in my office. I put it in my office to look at it. This is part of it. No more. Finished. And I walked away from it. 3 months now. 3 months. And I know you can't tell, but there's been a big difference. I think, I don't know, over 5-6 kilograms. I lost, so I just want to say, from saying no, there's been a big difference. And in that, I can feel that difference. And I chose I want to do something healthy. So with it, I made some decisions that changed my lifestyle. But now, whenever I go shopping with Heather, I'm looking at the back of packets going, how much fat's in there? Oh, 3 grams. I've become one of those sad people. I was looking at the porridge. Oh, 2 grams in this, 3 grams, better go for the 2 grams. I mean, but guys, every now and then when I walk in my office, these have got little faces on. And when I walk in, they sort of smile at me. And they entice me and they say, eat me. Please eat me, just one. Do you know what I mean? And that's where it starts, just one. Just one. And so I want to talk about the benefits. And this is the benefit that I want to talk about. It's one word. It's going to make all the difference. This is what I had to do to see a difference in my life. It's change. Change. See, I just feel the excitement in the room. Change. Now, if you didn't know, but Freedom Church is Change Central. So if you've got like a train station and, you've got all these people coming, it's like Freedom Church, there is change happening. So either get out quick right now, wherever you are, or be ready to face and be challenged with change. And I chose this, I was doing something else, and God just said, you know what? You can speak about a lot of benefits, like, say, knowing the peace of God, knowing the grace of God, knowing the compassion, knowing His love, and all these. But if you don't get change, if you don't get the benefit of change and understand what it really means, you're going to struggle to grasp hold of so much more. So that's why I want to bring this word of change, because you see, with change, that's what I needed when I started to change my whole diet after 40 years. To say, I'm going to cut out things I've never cut. I'm going to consider things I've never done. I'm going to start saying no to things. And some of us, we want to be healthy without making the choices and the toughness of, when you're just like thinking, I'm just feeling weak right now. I'm feeling weak. You're going to say, I'm going to walk away. And I put these in my office so I can look at them. Because I realized unless I got the power to say no to something that's in front of me, I'm probably going to say yes at some point later. And guys, there's something about the power of change that He puts within every one of us as a human being. So this is the announcement that if your life is boring right now, change it. If you're fed up with your life right now, you have an ability to change it. If you feel hard done by, you have the ability to change it. Whatever situation you're in right now, see, there's this lie that says to you, there's no way, I just don't feel I have the power to change the direction of my life. I've come here today to say that through Jesus Christ, there is the power to change. Change. And so I'm saying, many of us, we stick with the same thing year in and year out. And this, please be careful, because people have done this before. You can change your hairstyle. Because you've had that same thing for 20 years. People are bored of it. I have to be careful, because I like my wife's hair. Because I know, you got to be careful, because it's like, oh, don't you like my hair? Yeah, you've changed it several times. So, I'm telling you, change. There are so many of us that are in a pattern right now, and we're just sort of doing the same thing we've always done. See, as human beings, we just get in this pattern of doing the same things, playing safe, dressing the same, looking the same. Oh, well, it's not really me to do that. Well, maybe it should be. See, change has the ability to bring something new, but you need to understand the power within change. So, the power to change is God's gift to you. You've got to realize it's his gift to you. See, Jesus came to bring all change, the biggest change our world has ever seen. But, see, if we are like Christ, guess what happens? He's brought the power of change to you. And I hear people all the time say, hey, well, I'd love to do that, but I just don't feel like I'm able. Oh, so you haven't got the ability. I'll tell you what. You have the power. It's something of the benefits of following Christ. Even in the world, people without Christ are able to make some great choices and changes. How much more do you think we, as his believers, have the ability to change, to bring change? And I can talk about, hey, doing the same job forever and ever, going to the same holiday place for year after year after year, playing it safe, keeping it sort of, we've got to this is the way we do it. Well, maybe we need to change. Because maybe there's something bigger about the decision of change that opens up your world. It's the way that it works. It's what God has for us. And it doesn't matter today who I'm speaking to. It doesn't matter how messed up your background is. It doesn't matter what your history is. It doesn't matter if you've come from, a place where you really were a victim and you've had a tough start. It doesn't matter if you're in a place where you just feel stuck or you've got a limit and a lack in your life. Do you know what? Change has the power to change everyone. Everyone. You'll see. Come on the journey. Whatever your background, however you feel about yourself, I'm speaking to you today. However you feel about yourself, God wants to come and say, do you know what? The power of change is my gift to you. But do we believe it? Do we believe that's true? I want to just quickly give you an example of one of the Old Testament Bible characters. That's Jesus. He was there, but Moses. And Moses, when I look at this ability to change, Moses is one of those. We know that he grew up in Pharaoh's household in this privileged place, and then he had an anger issue, and from that anger issue, a lack of self-control, he ends up murdering someone, and then from murdering someone, he ends up sort of out in a desert in a place for a long, long time being a shepherd. And that's what he does until God comes and says, now it's time to what? Come and move into my purpose. You were called more than just to be a shepherd. But what was required of Moses, because straight away it says Moses was fearful about having to go and answer the call and stand before this ruler of the world to say, let my people go. Fear overwhelmed him. And also he didn't feel sufficient. He didn't feel he had enough. It was like, you got the wrong person. Can you get someone else? And there was something about Moses, when I see him from the person who was a murderer, he was messed up. And yet God calls him. Because, you see, God believes in the ability of change in every one of us. And he takes Moses and he puts him in Pharaoh's court to speak up. He says, well, I believe in you, Moses. But one thing Moses had to do was he had to be willing to change. And that's what I want to ask you today. Are you willing to change? Because that's where it stops for many of us. It's like, hey, I know God can change me, but am I willing? If you are willing, anything is possible. And you see Moses, who leads millions of people out of slavery, out of Egypt. He leads them out of captivity. A man who was a messed up person, probably more messed up than most people I'm speaking to today, because he was willing to say, God, you can change me. I feel this way, but Lord, I'm going to hear what you have to say about me. So there is something powerful when we put change into gear. This is what happens. The comfort of our fear paralyzes change. And I was just thinking about what prevents people from change. Even right now, there's some people here who love change, right? But a lot of people, they're fearful of change. Why do you think people do the same thing? What if I change my hairstyle? I don't like it. What if I try a new career or a new job or something I was always told I'd never achieve and I fail? And we know that, I can just give you loads and loads of, examples that fear it'll almost stroke us like a black evil cat or babby. And it'll stroke the cat. Like, that's what fear is like. It's like, we have that fear in us. Interesting. We're not quick to get rid of fear. Fear wants to stroke us and say, you just stay there. You just stay on the lap of complacency. You just stay in the warmth of your fear, because it's better what you know than what you don't know. And fear could have kept Moses in the desert, but he decided to break out and face the fear. And so today, you're going to need to face fear, because change will push you. I guarantee it will push you to the place. Whatever you fear is going to push you right there. Because change is like, I need to gain courage to move through fear. And it's uncomfortable. But when you start breaking through, you realize that thing that you thought would swallow you up isn't going to swallow you up at all. But you've got to be willing to move forward and move according to his plans. So let's look at this scripture here as well. Ephesians 4, verse 22 to 24. But that's no life for you, okay? So I'm here today, no life for you. You learned Christ. My assumption is that you've paid careful attention to him, been well instructed in the truth. You should know this stuff, guys, precisely as we have it in Jesus. Since then, we do not have the excuse of ignorance. Everything, and I mean everything, connected with the old way of life has to go. Oh. That means when we come to Christ, salvation, we're saved by grace and grace alone. But when we come, we have the choice to change. And what he's saying here is you can come to Christ and you can either remain there with your things that you want to see, break free, change from, habits, addiction, all these things, your cycle of life that just is on repeat. You can change, but you need to leave the old way. Part of that old way is fear. It's rotten through and through, by the way, because sin so easily entangles. Change requires movement. Movement requires freedom. Get rid of it and then take on an entirely new way of life, a God-fashioned life, a life itself, renewed from the inside and working itself into your conduct as God accurately reproduces what? His character in you. So what is he trying to do? Today, he wants to reproduce his character, his way, and there is just something about breaking off. What did Jesus say? Behold, I've come to make all things new. He went around looking for followers that would say, I'm ready to leave, change, and follow. That's what he did. That's who he was looking for. But going back to Moses, it wasn't just a case. Just think about Moses. He led millions of people out of slavery, out of Egypt. But it wasn't just taking people out of slavery. When they were in the wilderness and they kept going in circles and they were a bunch of complainers, do you know what God was trying to do also? Not just get them out of Egypt, but he was trying to get Egypt out of them. And guys, we can move out of slavery, but we can remain in slavery. And some of us, even right now I'm speaking to, we came to know who Jesus Christ is. Do you know what I mean? And we came into that place where we knew that he was our Savior. And yet we still feel like Egypt is in us. It is. I'm speaking to a lot of people right now, aren't I? I'm speaking to all of us. I know it because weekly it happens with me. It's like God is continually saying, do you know what? I know I brought you out, but I want to get out that thinking that is entrenched in you, because you see, they spent hundreds of years as slaves, so their thinking was slavery. Their thinking was victim mentality. Their father, their forefather, you see, they were involved in the same pattern, in the same expectation, in the same way of, oh, this is just our lot. So even in the wilderness, although they were out physically, spiritually, they were still slaves. And that's why God says, change. What he was trying to do was he was saying to these people, are you willing to change? And because they weren't willing to change, what happened? They never entered the promised land. So that says to me, we got a choice to be willing and change and enter that promise, or die in circles, traveling in circles. This one is really something huge for me. Entitlement, you see, this thing of entitlement excuses our responsibility to change. So when I look at the people in the desert, what was it? They felt entitled. They had miracle food, miracle clothes, but they were bored of it. They were bored of a great miracle. We can sometimes know what it is to follow and be involved in God's house, and yet we can take it very much for granted. Entitlement sort of really says, hey, I'm actually entitled to stay as I am. We can talk about being passionate for him. It's like, well, I'm not really like that. See, we excuse ourselves. And this is one of the common things that I really sort of detest, is when people say, oh, it's just the way I am. You're very insensitive with the way you speak to people. And do you know you really hurt that? But, well, it's just the way I am. I say it as it is. As if it's a badge of honor, but it's a badge of disgrace. And you see, we use this and we speak entitlement. It's like, I'm entitled to be this way, because we're all different, aren't we? We're all different, and it's like, it's the way I am. It's the way I'm made. So what you're saying is, the way I am is the way I'm going to stay. And I am speaking to everyone right now. There are things, because do you know what? The greatest deception is self-deception. Is that we don't really see it. We have somehow excused, because of our past, because of our parents, because of our situation, because of our lack, because of our history, where we've come from. It's like, well, I'm entitled not to change. And I know in sharing this message, there'll be a conflict with change and this word stubbornness. And I just had a quick little look at what stubbornness meant, being stubborn. Because sometimes it's like, it's like, well, there's a good bit of stubbornness, isn't it? Because you dig your heels in, it's like, ah. But I didn't find that. Stubborn is having or showing a dogged determination not to change one's attitude or position on something, especially in spite of good reasons and benefits to do so. So you might feel that stubbornness even right now, saying, oh, yeah, I know God's been talking to me about that person I need to forgive, but I'm different because what I went through. I know God is talking to me about leaving my church background behind me, because right now I can't move on because I got hurt by church. I speak to a lot of people right now. You've come into our locations, into our churches, and you're sort of still, you're not trusting. It's like, I'm going to be independent, I'll come and partake, but I had a bad experience. I got abused by some leadership or some situation, and you may have very well, I'm sure. But as long as you keep saying, I'm not moving, is that going to be 3 weeks' time? Oh, I just need a bit of time. Because you see, that's what stubbornness does. It delays. It delays into the point that we didn't even realize we were meant to be fighting something. And stubbornness will delay and it will put off. And it's like 6 months go by, 12 months of our life. We have stayed still and not moved through change into the place that God has called us. You cannot activate the future from the past. You've got to move straight into what God has called you to, but change is required. You need to kick stubbornness in the teeth. You need to recognize that it's connected to rebellion. You need to recognize that it's something that the Israelites, when they were in the desert, when they were there, it's something in their hearts. We're not changing. Look what we went through. Does God even care? Change. See, this is where change comes in. It says, do you know what? There's a better way here. You know, I talk about like church history and church past. It really is like being married to someone that abused me. I finish that relationship. I find someone I love, and I perhaps end up in another marriage. So I'm with them, and then what I do is I treat them like the way that I was treated before. People say, well, I can't trust you, can I? Because this is the way I was treated. No, you've got to move on. You've got to get free, because if I start responding through an abusive situation into a fresh thing that God has given me, I'm going to miss the opportunity. And see, in our mind right now, it can't be that easy. Yes, it is. Because we feel that sometimes it's got to be, oh, this was a big cost. This was a big hurt. This was something big. I need 6 months, 12 months to work this through. No, the enemy is telling you that, because I know the power of the blood of Jesus will bring healing and freedom, that we have a God that comes and moves. And do you know what? He's able to do something in a moment that no man can do. See, this isn't about just self-help. This isn't just about, getting a better way of thinking. This is about engaging the supernatural. This is about engaging, but we got to get rid of entitlement, because entitlement will rob you. And I've prayed sometimes. I've go around the world and we visit campuses. And we have, over the years, prayed for the same person, for the same thing, year after year. It's not to do with the prayer I'm praying. They want the prayer to fix it. I just want to say, change. I want to say, stop speaking to your wife like you speak to her. Start leading your children. Start moving against depression. Stop thinking about yourself all the time and think about all the people around you. Do you know what? You've got to change your mind. You've got to change your thinking. You're waiting for someone else to do it, because you see entitlement. See, they're saying, oh, it's the way I am. It's just, I've got this problem again. You pray for me, Pastor. So you feel entitled. You've excused your responsibility, and you're trying to put it upon me, or trying to put it upon God to fix what he gave you the power to fix. Tell you what, people, God is speaking. See, this is what he says. I've got the Amplified because it's just great the way it says. Romans 12, verse 2. Do not be conformed to this world any longer with its superficial values and customs, but be transformed and progressively changed. See, progressively changed. As you mature spiritually. By the renewing of your mind. So notice this renewing. So be transformed by what? The renewing of your mind. The transformation comes through here. So that you may prove for yourselves what the will of God is. That which is good and acceptable and perfect in his plan and purpose for you. So why do you need to be willing to change? Because you need to discover the purpose and plan. You will never arrive at the place of realizing your full potential unless you engage change and you're willing to respond to it in your life. That's the way it works. See, you can make a decision to change, even today. I really pray that there's going to be a point where people say, I'm going to decide to change the way I keep thinking. Because the way I think keeps getting the same results. So you've got to think something different to get a different result. I'm going to change. And change is like an event. It can happen today. But to manage the impact of change is a process. So today you can change your mind, and you have the power to say, I will leave that thing behind today. I will move on from my history. I will move on. I'm saying goodbye to it. But do you know what? Tomorrow morning, you're going to have to get up and do the same. Do you know what? Next week, you're going to have to do the same. Do you know what? You can say goodbye to intimidation and anxiety and those things, but you're going to have to keep saying, renew my mind, Lord, renew my mind. How do we renew our minds? Through his word. Lord, renew my mind. You have called me, not a spirit of timidity or fear, but a spirit of power and of sound mind. So I'm going to need to get that in me. And that can be a week, it can be a month, it can be a year, it can be 2 years. You just got to keep renewing your mind. See this process of renewing your mind. But we want a quick fix. We want an event. We want to say, change me, Lord. Let it go. Yet it sat on our desk the next morning saying, eat me. They do those things. They want, because you've been in a cyclical pattern. You've been in a pattern of way of thinking. You have had years and years. We can be away from Jesus for 20, 30, 40 years, but we expect him to sort things out in a few weeks. Going to need to get Egypt out of you. And that means the willingness to change. A willingness to change the way that we think. So this is the last one. Change begins in your mind, not in your situation. Guys, it begins in your mind, not in your situation. How do I become more courageous if I'm fearful? By deciding I'm going to take steps. When I recognize fear, I'm going to push and face fear, right? How do I deal with unresolved hurt? I decide in my mind I'm going to forgive. I decide next week when it comes back, the awful thing that happened to me, I'm going to forgive. See, I've made a decision in my mind that I will not be held captive. I made a decision here. I'm not waiting for someone to come and say sorry. I'm not waiting to be paid back. I'm not waiting because I know that Jesus paid all of it for me. He paid everything for me. Nothing's left. He covered it all. Everything. But he's just saying, now you've got the power to change. See, I can't preach this to unbelievers because there are things in life that you just got to cope with. But with Jesus, you can overcome. You can get free of. You can move out of your background and your past and your abuse and your hurt and pain. Out of the addiction. The thing that your father had depression, you have depression, your kids got depression. You can move, you can make choices because of Jesus. See, that's the confidence that I've got because of this message, but it starts in your mind. Many of us are waiting for our financial situations to change before we change our mind about being generous. But generosity isn't anything to do with what you have. Guys, as we close, the devil, I think this is one of the best kept secrets that the devil has kept from the church, is that you have the power to change. Because when you really realize it, you're a danger. If you hear and respond to this word, it can change everything. The reason I got this confidence is Philippians 4 verse 13. It says, what? I can do all things. How many things? All things through Christ who strengthens me. As I said, this is not a self-help message, right? What we do is we swing one way or the other. It's either all, hey, say a magic prayer or a prophetic word or a special word, and I went to and this happened, and my problems were fixed. Occasionally it happens, but I've known more when people hear, they respond, and then they're willing to change. And every step they take, they're walking away from what once held them captive. And that's because when you realize that I can do all things through Christ, I know some of you, there might be panic right now, there might be fear, because you know God is speaking to you. He's saying, time to change. Time to change. I brought you here for this message. You're watching on TV right now because of this message. He's saying he wants to set you free. Do you know what? There is nothing more offensive to God our Father, right? That when he gave us the ability to change through giving the life of his Son, that we refuse to stay in our mess. You think that upsets him? I gave everything for you so that you could break out. You could be free through change, but you choose to stay as you are. So he's saying, will you change? I believe there's something for every one of us where he's saying, power to change. Because the cost of refusing to change is regret. I don't know, you get to the end of your life thinking, wow, I knew God called me for many things, but I didn't see them. I didn't see those things. I can probably tell you that it's because of this one benefit that he gave you, the benefit to change from where you were to who he's called you to be. And so for every one of you now, as we close out, I want you to realize that the church is the greatest place for change in the world. It is the greatest place for change in the world, people. Why? Because Jesus is at the heart of it. There is nowhere that you get a group of people, and I could be in a room right now, say of 200 people, and I could bring up for the next few days people that will testify of change, change, change in our locations around the world. Change. I won't have to look far. It's everywhere. We have this. You can't do that without Christ. I could go and get 200 people off the street, random people, and then say, right, tell me how you changed, how you broke free, how you moved from this life to that life, how you broke from your bad history, how you broke from that small town thinking and you broke into nations. Tell me how you got free and you got forgiven. Tell me how you found grace. Tell me how you found peace. Tell me how you found healing. Tell me how you found purpose and potential. It's the church, people. And I love it. I love her. This church, I love her so much because this is the bride of Christ. This is what he gave his life for. This is change central. So right now you're in a place where change is possible because he made everything possible. And at the intersection of the cross, this was the intersection of change for humanity, change forever. And because we have a bloodstained cross and an empty tomb, that's why we can change. All because of him. You can change. So you've got to start resisting stubbornness, being willing to change. Because he has incredible plans for every one of us.